Over the summer, I participated in a short film contest called Dirt Diaries, which takes place in Whistler, Canada. My entry involved taking my friend Scott mountain biking for the first time in his life. Having not seen him in well over a decade, I looked Scott up on Instagram only to find that he was still riding his BMX, just like we did together in high school. To make a long story short, I reconnected with Scott and he was all too willing to participate in my film. So that summer, we flew to Canada together to ride downhill in Whistler. Scott was absolutely blown away, first by the scenery and then by his new equipment. He even embraced the part where you climb to earn your descent. But coming from BMX, riding lift serve downhill was the deal sealer. Most of you already know how the story goes. By day 3, Scott learned to ride his mountain bike rather well. In fact, Scott was boosting all the jumps on A-line so hard that, well, he didn't even need to go fast. My friend Mike normally clears these jumps, but couldn't when following Scott. Scott was hooked on downhill, and at the end of the week, he was gutted to be leaving Whistler. The video we made ended up getting 3rd place at Dirt Diaries, and Scott and I had a boatload of amazing memories to show for it. But we both knew that it would be a long time before Scott would get to ride lift serve downhill again, as he makes his home in Austin, Texas. While Austin has great food, amenities, and BMX spots, it's notably devoid of mountains. Even in the hills west of the city, nobody would ever be dumb enough to build a ski lift. This is the Texas Eagle, the first chairlift to ever operate in the Lone Star State. It runs from the valley floor to the summit of Spider Mountain, a 350-foot hill. Understandably, haters were writing Spider Mountain's obituary long before it opened. Where would all the riders come from, and who would travel to Texas hill country for a 4-minute descent? Well, opening weekend happened and people traveled from as far as San Antonio, Dallas, Oklahoma, and even Louisiana to ride there. I traveled from North Carolina because I had to see this place. Scott somehow ended up 1 hour from a downhill park, which is closer than Whistler is to Vancouver. I had to come out here and celebrate. The funny part is that it snowed on opening weekend. The whole selling point of Spider Mountain is lift serve downhill in the winter. While other parks switch to skiing by the end of fall, Spider's midday temperatures normally hover around the 60s in February. Austin is also the full package in terms of destination cities. There's a big airport, lots of great food, and even a marshmallow dealership. But a lot of people still have reservations about Spider's 350-foot descent. Let me attempt to give you a frame of reference for how high that is. This is Berm Creek, my backyard, which has 25 feet of vertical. It's over in just a couple of seconds, but it's plenty fun. Here's Highland Bike Park in New Hampshire, at 700 feet. This'll give you a nice 10-minute run if you take your time and stop between trails, and it's more than enough for the likes of Skills with Phil. This is Mountain Creek Resort in New Jersey, with 1,000 feet of vertical. That's almost like putting Spider Mountain on top of Highland. Stepping way up in vertical is Whistler Mountain in British Columbia, which from the peak boasts 4,900 feet of vertical descent. But most people don't go up that high. In fact, you may spend a week in Whistler having never traveled higher than the Fitzsimmons Zone, which has 1,200 feet of vertical. That's where A-Line, Crank It Up, and all the jump trails are. So if 1,200 feet is enough for the most popular section of a world-class downhill park, then 350 feet is enough to have a lot of fun on, especially if you live in Central Texas. For lift serve downhill, residents of Austin, San Antonio, and Dallas used to drive 12 hours to Angel Fire, which is only open in the summer. Some also travel to Arkansas, but to those in the know, there's always been plenty to ride right here in Texas Hill Country. Reveille Peak Ranch is only 10 minutes from Spider Mountain and has existed for quite some time. With great dirt, rugged terrain, and not too shabby scenery, Reveille Peak is as good an option as Spider if you don't mind pedaling for it. Locals have scratched everything from single track to jump lines into the hillside here. And the landowners just ask for a waiver and $10 to access all of it. So it was no surprise to me that Hill Country already had a group of locals who could absolutely shred. Nobody is more excited than Jeremiah, who has spent years organizing races and trail building initiatives in the area.
So their plan is to have 6 off the top, 12 off the middle, and 24 off the bottom.
For Jeremiah, Spider Mountain is a testament to how far Austin's mountain bike scene has come. And Spider Mountain brings to the area a lot more than just an easy trip to the top of a big hill. On park day, you don't need to eat a light breakfast, bring a water bottle, or wear a chamois. You don't need to check your speed in consideration of other trail users. You don't need to conserve energy. You just do lap after lap until your bike breaks or your hands fall off. Bike parks exist to satisfy our need for unadulterated exhilaration, but there's also the social aspect of bike parks. A chairlift is a great place for conversation, and when you get to the top, everyone seems to congregate before dropping in. If you want to bond with your fellow downhill enthusiasts, the best way to do it is to run a train together, on a trail. A train involves riding in recklessly close proximity to each other while going as fast as you can. It's a blast, but requires a high degree of confidence in the riders in front of you. Although the trail options at Spider are currently limited, I never got sick of this hand-cut intermediate route to the bottom. In fact, as I learned the lines, it only got better. The advanced trails are mostly tech right now, with steep off-camber sections following the path of least resistance down the hill. And if you're not careful, some of them will get you.
Woo! Whoa! Oh, you good? Oh. Do you want another shoulder on this side?
We gotta get you right down to the bottom. Yeah, I'm...
Most of these runs were built for enduro races before the lift was in operation. My friend Eric, from the YouTube channel No Front Brakes, has climbed this hill countless times during such events, and has now completed more runs in one day than he has in his entire life. Scott and I regaled Eric with tales of our Whistler trip.
Yo, Seth, you should show him that X up.
Like the time Scott almost went OTB on the moon booter. While Spider doesn't yet have a moon booter of its own, it does have some pretty sweet jumps at the bottom, followed by a wide swooping flow trail which seems to have been cut to build additional jumps on. So at least for now, the naysayers don't have a leg to stand on. Spider had a very successful opening weekend, and as they build more trail, things can only get better. If this all works out, I could see other warm cities building parks like this in their hills. I'm looking at you, Atlanta. As for Scott, things seem to be working out for him rather well. Imagine you ride downhill for the first time in your life, and only months later they build a bike park near your house. Just from riding the trails around Austin, Scott had already met a lot of people at the park that weekend, and it seems like now more than ever, he'll be getting tons of use out of his new bike. Being that I would travel to Austin just for the food, it's safe to say I'll be back next winter to see how things have progressed. To all the builders and riders in Hill Country, I'm really happy for all of you. Thanks for riding with me today, and I'll see you next time.